You bring home a 10-pound bag of onions from the market on a Saturday. They look perfect, firm, dry, papery on the outside. You set the bag on the kitchen counter, think you will deal with them later, and later becomes Sunday, then Monday. By Wednesday, you tuck the bag into a corner of the cabinet under the sink, because there is no better place, really, and you more or less forget about them. 3 weeks pass. One morning you open that cabinet looking for something else, and the smell hits you before you even see them. One onion at the bottom has turned soft and dark, a slow rot spreading outward from a bruise you never noticed. 2 others have started pushing up pale green shoots from the top, curling toward the thin light that comes through the cabinet gap. The outer skins are slipping. The whole bag has taken on that heavy, fermented sweetness that means the process has already gone too far. You throw away 4 of them, maybe 5, and then you put the rest in a bowl on the counter because you do not know where else to keep them, and you know somewhere in the back of your mind that the bowl will not fix anything. That is not bad luck. That is bad storage. And those are 2 very different problems. The onion is one of the most forgiving vegetables a kitchen will ever see. Under the right conditions, it can stay firm, dry, sweet, and fully usable for months, not weeks. Old farm households used to keep onions well into winter and beyond, not because they had special tools or fancy equipment, but because they understood something simple about what an onion needs and what it cannot tolerate. My name is Samuel Miller. I was born and raised in a plain community in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the pantry in our home was never treated as a dumping ground. My mother ran that pantry like a working system. Every vegetable had its place and its reason for being there. Onions were no different. They had rules, the same way a good tool has rules. You care for it properly, and it gives you back its full use. You ignore those rules, and you waste both the food and the money that bought it. In this video, I want to walk you through everything a careful kitchen needs to know about storing onions. Not a shortcut, not a trick. A complete understanding, from how you choose them at the market, to where you keep them at home, to how you tell the difference between one that still has weeks left in it and one that needs to be used today. By the end of this, you will not guess anymore. You will know. Let us start at the beginning, because most storage problems begin before the onion ever reaches the home. There is a habit many people have at the market. They take whatever bag is closest to the front of the bin, toss it in the cart, and move on. That works well enough for many things. It does not work well for onions. The onion you bring home sets the ceiling on how long your storage can last. If you start with a weak onion, no method in the world will make it last. The goal of every storage technique is to slow down decay, not reverse it. So before you even think about where you will keep them, think about how you choose them. Hold the onion in your hand. It should feel heavy for its size, not bulky, heavy. Density matters. A firm, dense onion has retained its moisture inside the flesh where it belongs. A light onion, one that feels almost hollow, has already begun losing moisture through its outer layers. That process does not stop once you bring it home. Look at the skin. The outer papery layers, called the tunic, should be dry, crinkly, and tight against the body of the onion. Not peeling away in large, loose sheets. Not soft at the edges. Not shiny, which can indicate surface moisture. When the skin is dry and crackly, it is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, acting as a barrier between the inner flesh and the outside air. That skin is the onion's first line of protection, and you want it intact. Run your thumb across the neck, the narrow top where the stem used to be. This is the most important spot to check, and the one most people skip entirely. Press gently with your thumb. There should be no give whatsoever. If it feels soft, spongy, or hollow, that onion has already begun softening from the inside. The decay often starts at the neck, works its way down, and by the time you see it on the outside, the center is already compromised. A firm neck means the onion was properly cured after harvest. A soft neck means it was not, or that moisture has found a way in. Check the root end too. A few dry, thread-like roots are fine. Those are normal. But if the root end is wet, dark, or showing green shoots already pushing out from the bottom, leave that onion where it is. Avoid any bag where you can see or smell moisture. Condensation inside a plastic bag is a warning. If the onions feel damp to the touch, they have been exposed to humidity that their skin wasn't able to repel. That moisture creates the conditions for mold and soft rot to begin, and they will begin whether you refrigerate those onions or leave them out. Starting dry is not optional. Old farm households often bought onions at the end of summer or early fall, when harvest onions were properly cured and at their driest. The curing process, leaving pulled onions in a warm, dry place with good air circulation for 2 to 3 weeks, allows outer skins to dry completely and tighten. A well-cured onion is prepared for long storage. A wet or undercured one is not. If you ever grow your own, cure them before you store them. Now you have brought home a good bag. Firm, dry, heavy, tight-necked. Here is where most people make a mistake that undoes all of that careful selection in the first week. They leave the onions in the plastic bag. The plastic bag was designed to get onions from the farm to the store without bruising them. It was not designed for home storage. Plastic traps moisture. It restricts air movement. It collects any humidity that the onions naturally release. And they do release humidity, especially in the first days after you bring them home, and holds that moisture right against the skin. That warm, damp environment is exactly what mold and rot need to take hold. The very first thing to do when you get home is take the onions out of the plastic. Spread them out somewhere with air, a table, a counter, a large tray, and let them breathe for an hour or two. Let any surface moisture dry off. Then, when you are ready to store them, put them in something that allows air to circulate freely around every onion. A mesh bag works well. A wooden crate with gaps in the sides. A wire basket. A burlap sack. An old pillowcase with the open end folded over loosely. A paper bag with several holes punched in it. The goal is constant, gentle air movement. Onions that sit pressed against each other in still, stale air will begin to deteriorate at the contact points where their skins touch. That spot holds moisture and blocks ventilation. The old habit in many farm households was to braid the dried tops together and hang bunches from a rafter or a nail in the cellar ceiling. Hanging allowed every onion full air exposure on all sides. If you cannot hang them, at minimum make sure they are not packed tightly against each other. Do not store them in sealed containers. Not glass jars, not plastic bins with lids, not airtight anything. Air must move through. Here is the question most people have by this point. Where, exactly, do you keep them? The honest answer is this. Onions need cool, dark, and dry. Those 3 conditions are what everything else comes down to. Cool means somewhere between about 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Not freezing, not room temperature. A root cellar, a cool basement, an unheated garage in mild weather, a dark corner of an old stone-walled pantry. Before widespread refrigeration, farm families built their root cellars specifically to maintain these temperatures through winter. The cool air slowed the chemical processes inside the onion that cause it to sprout or soften. But here is what most modern kitchens get wrong. The refrigerator is too cold and too humid for whole, uncut onions. The cold can alter the texture. The humidity, especially in a crisper drawer, is exactly what the onion cannot handle. Put a whole, unpeeled onion in the refrigerator, and within a few weeks, it will often turn soft and develop off flavors from absorbing surrounding moisture and odors. The refrigerator is for cut onions sealed in a container, not for whole ones. Room temperature, the kind most kitchens run at, between 68 and 75 degrees, is too warm for extended storage. Onions can start to sprout within a few weeks, especially with any light exposure. Warmth activates the onion's internal processes. It thinks it is time to grow. Dark matters just as much. Even indirect light from a window or open shelf can shorten storage life noticeably. If you have a cool, dark pantry or cellar, use it. If you have no cool storage at all, buy in smaller quantities and use them faster. So far, 3 things: a firm onion chosen at the market, taken out of plastic and given room to breathe, and placed in cool, dark, ventilated storage. Those steps alone will make a meaningful difference. But there is more to know. One thing that surprises many people is how much onions are affected by what they are stored near. Keep them away from potatoes. This is not an old wives' tale. It is a practical observation that many farm kitchens made through simple experience. Potatoes release moisture as they sit, and they also release ethylene gas, a natural compound that accelerates ripening and deterioration in nearby produce. Onions stored close to potatoes tend to sprout sooner and soften faster. The 2 vegetables share many of the same storage preferences in terms of cool and dark, but they should be kept in separate areas, or at minimum with significant space between them. Old pantries that were well organized often had 1 shelf or section for each. That separation was not accidental. Also, keep onions away from strong-smelling foods. An onion will absorb odors through its papery skin more readily than you might expect. Stored near something pungent, certain cured meats, strongly scented cleaning products, or fruit actively releasing ethylene, the onion will take on those flavors and deteriorate more quickly. Garlic and onions are cousins in the same plant family. But even they do best with a little space between them, rather than being stored in a jumbled pile together. Let us talk about sprouting, because that is the complaint I hear most often. You open the pantry, and the onion that was perfectly fine last week has pushed out a pale green shoot from the top. Sometimes 1 shoot, sometimes 2 or 3. The skin has started to loosen. The onion feels slightly less firm than it did. A sprouted onion is not ruined, but it is a sign that the onion has shifted its energy. Instead of holding its nutrition in the layers of flesh, it is beginning to invest that energy in new growth. The green shoot itself is edible and has a mild onion flavor. Use it the way you would use a scallion. But the flesh near the center around the sprout will be softer and sometimes slightly bitter. Use a sprouted onion soon. Cut away the sprout. Use what remains in cooking. Sprouting is caused by warmth and light, primarily. An onion that sprouts in storage is telling you something. It got too warm, too light, or both. Adjust the storage conditions for the rest of your onions before you lose more of them. There is an old habit some households kept, particularly when storing large amounts of onions through winter. Checking the storage once a week. Not deeply, just a quick look. Pull out any onion that has begun to soften, sprout, or show spots of mold. Remove it from the group. Use it that day or the next if any portion is still good. This matters because a single rotting onion genuinely does affect its neighbors. The moisture and gases released by one deteriorating onion accelerate the process in those around it. Removing it early keeps the rest of the batch healthy. My wife still does this on Saturdays. She walks the pantry like she is looking for something, but really she is just checking. A quick squeeze of each onion, a look at the tops and bottoms, a smell if anything seems off. It takes 5 minutes. It has saved more food over the years than I could count. If you do have access to real cold storage, a root cellar or cool basement that stays in that 40 to 50 degree range, there are additional things worth knowing. Cured onions stored with space between them in a dark, ventilated space with low humidity can keep very well for several months, some varieties more than others. Yellow storage onions, the kind with thick, dry, golden brown skins, are bred for exactly this purpose. They have a lower water content than sweet onions, higher sulfur compounds, and thicker protective skins. They are not as pleasant raw as a Vidalia or a Walla Walla, but they are the right tool for long-term keeping. Sweet onions, with their thinner skins and higher moisture content, are designed to be eaten fresh. They do not store well for extended periods. If you are growing your own or buying directly from a farm, choosing a variety with long storage in mind is the first decision. Some varieties, when properly handled, remain usable for 6 months or more under ideal conditions. Whether a full year is achievable depends on the specific variety, how carefully they were cured, the exact temperature and humidity of your storage space, and how regularly you inspect and remove weak ones. It is not a guarantee. It is a ceiling that disciplined storage can approach. Do not promise yourself a miracle. Promise yourself a system. And work the system. There is another method worth knowing, one that old rural households used when they had a surplus and wanted to preserve onions beyond their fresh storage life. Drying. Onions can be sliced thin and dried, in the sun, on a clean screen in good weather, in a low oven with the door cracked, or in a food dehydrator. Dried onion slices keep for well over a year in an airtight container in a cool, dark place. They rehydrate in cooking and add strong, concentrated flavor to soups, stews, and braises. The texture is not the same as fresh, but for cooked applications, they are genuinely useful and have a place in a well-stocked pantry. Pickling is the other option. Onions pickled in vinegar with salt and simple spices keep for months in the refrigerator and considerably longer in a properly processed jar. Small pearl onions and larger slices both work well. This is not a modern food trend. It is one of the oldest preservation techniques in the world, used in kitchens long before refrigeration existed. Let me pause here and gather what we have covered, because the details matter. We started at the market with selection. Heavy for its size, dry and tight skin, firm neck with no give, dry root end, no plastic bags with condensation. We moved to the moment you get home, out of the plastic, onto a surface to breathe, then into something ventilated, mesh, wire, burlap, wood, paper with holes. We talked about where: cool, dark, and dry, away from potatoes, away from fruit, away from strong odors. We talked about temperature, not the refrigerator for whole onions, not warm kitchen counters for long storage, but cool basement or cellar conditions when possible. We talked about sprouting, caused by warmth and light. Not a disaster, but a signal. Use those onions soon. We talked about checking weekly and removing weak onions before they affect the rest. And we talked about the difference between storage varieties and sweet varieties, because choosing the right type matters. All of that is the system. None of it is complicated. None of it requires a special product or a gadget or anything you do not already have. What it requires is attention. Paying attention at the market, paying attention when you get home, paying attention once a week in the pantry. There is a phrase I have heard in our kind of community when someone explains why they do a thing a certain way. They say, "This is how waste was prevented." Not reduced. Prevented. The difference between those two words is meaningful. A household that prevents waste does not wait for food to show signs of trouble before responding. It sets up the conditions that make trouble unlikely. It chooses with care. It stores with intention. It checks regularly. It uses what is weakest first. That kind of kitchen runs differently from one that responds to waste after it happens. Because by the time you smell the problem has already cost you. Old farm families were not more virtuous than modern ones. They were simply more constrained. The market was not around the corner. The budget was not forgiving. A bushel of onions that spoiled before February was not an inconvenience. It was a real loss, felt in real meals, for real people depending on what the pantry held. That constraint forced discipline, and the discipline produced habits that, once learned, stayed in families for generations, not because they were sentimental, but because they worked. When you think about the vegetables that old rural kitchens depended on through winter, onions were not just a flavoring. They were a staple, going into soups, stews, roasted meats, egg dishes, pickles, preserves. In the months when fresh vegetables were scarce and the garden was under snow, a basket of good onions in the cellar was a form of real security. Getting them right was not a preference. It was part of managing a household. Wasting food is still wasteful. Money spent on onions that end up in the trash is still money lost. The scale is different today. The principle is the same. One more thing I want to address, because I see it come up often. People ask whether it is safe to use an onion that has a soft spot, a small patch of mold, or a layer that smells slightly off. Here is the honest answer. It depends on how far the problem has gone. A single soft spot on an otherwise firm onion. Cut it away generously, leaving a good margin around and below the soft area, and use the rest immediately. Do not save it for later. Cook it that day. Any onion with visible mold, not just discoloration, but actual fuzzy mold growth on the skin or flesh, should be discarded. Mold on onions can penetrate beneath what you can see. Cutting away the visible mold does not guarantee you have removed all of it. An onion that smells strongly fermented or sour when you cut it open. Discard it. That smell indicates internal breakdown that has progressed past the point of safe use. An onion that is almost entirely soft, wet, or dark through most of its layers, discard it. This is not about being wasteful. It is about the difference between an onion past its peak and one that has genuinely gone bad. The first can still contribute to a meal if used promptly. The second should not be eaten. Trying to salvage it is not good economy. It is a health risk. The goal of good storage is to prevent good food from going bad too soon, not to rescue food that has already gone there. I want to leave you with a picture. Think about what a well-run pantry looks like when onion season has passed and the house has settled into late autumn. There is a wooden crate in the cool corner, off the floor on a simple board to allow air underneath. Inside it, 24 onions sit without touching, each one firm and dry, the skins like old parchment. Every Saturday someone checks them. One comes out that has a soft spot. It goes into that night's pot of soup. The rest stay. By December, those onions are still feeding the family. By January, the ones that were chosen and stored best are still firm. The crate is lighter, but what remains is good. That image is not romantic. It is functional. It is the result of choices made at the market, habits practiced at home, and attention paid over weeks and months. Nothing magic, nothing complicated. Just the kind of quiet discipline that old kitchens understood because they had to, and that modern kitchens can still choose because it still works. The onion has not changed. The conditions it needs to thrive have not changed. What changed is that we stopped learning these things as a matter of course, because convenience made the consequences of forgetting seem small. But the knowledge is still here. You just have to reach for it. Tell me in the comments which vegetable gives you the most trouble in storage. Is it onions? Or is it potatoes that go soft and sprout on you? Maybe it is garlic that molds before you finish it, or herbs that wilt in 3 days no matter what you do. Write it down below. I read every comment, and if enough of you are struggling with the same thing, that will be the next video. And if your mother or your grandmother kept a particular habit around the pantry, something small, something specific, something that just worked, write that down too. Those little household practices disappear quietly when nobody says them out loud. I would rather they did not. Next time, I want to talk about potatoes, about how to keep them from sprouting and turning green through winter, and about one simple mistake most people make when they store their first bag of the season, one that can ruin the whole lot within a few weeks. It is not difficult to avoid. You just have to know what to look for before you ever put them away. We will get into all of it. Stay with me.